Piracy is so back, baby. Streaming is a scam. Piracy is back from Moon. Check it out.
The internet has enabled all the content you could possibly dream of to be accessible at a fingertip. Streaming is now everywhere. Any movie or TV show you want to watch is there. And yet, just as we're saturated with streaming content everywhere, piracy is now back and becoming normal again. Because people are starting to realize that modern streaming is a scam, and millions of people are just simply tuning out. And despite the ads and the price hikes, the studios are still losing billions. Because we are going into a new golden age of piracy. But this wave of piracy is simply a wider symptom that the internet as a whole is dying. The same greedy decisions that are killing streaming are also undermining the entire internet as a whole, and possibly the rest of the economy. And now as we see governments restricting 18+ content, requiring users to do facial scans and upload their physical IDs to gatekeep the internet, trying to literally block VPNs as we speak, it's clear we're in for a new age of piracy. But how did
Yeah, it's insane with what I saw with what you can see with the UK. I mean, they are it's crazy what they're doing, and it's so goddamn dystopian. And I wonder what they're gonna do is like they try to ban VPNs or they did something like that, and then you'll have to like scan your like the internet will not be anonymous anymore. There is kind of a point, which is a very important thing is coming up, is the internet going to be free or not in the future? And I hope it is going to be free. So, I mean, it's really bad if you have to scan with your, passport or whatever. You have to ID, and everything you do on the internet is monitored, by Big Brother. By the government. Yeah, what a shit. Like, go all in on Bitcoin. I hope crypto is going to also no. What I'm talking about is the fiat currency that also is going to die. Crypto is going to hopefully do some work.
This all start, and where did this come from? Let's start with streaming. People used to think it was the future, but the state of it today makes you nostalgic for the past. When you compare the modern state of streaming to what we used to have, it's night and day. Back when Netflix was the only show in town, it was insanely cheap compared to cable. For just $8 a month, you had access to Netflix's entire catalog. While Netflix didn't make their own shows, you still got far more value for money. These were the days before every Hollywood studio had segregated its backlog for its own platform. Pretty much anything you could imagine was on Netflix, available instantly. Compare that to today and you start to get a sense of just how messed up the streaming landscape has become. So let's see how it all stacks up in reality today. For the mainstream platforms, you've got Netflix, Amazon Prime, Hulu, HBO.
Yeah, I mean, back in the day, you could have everything on one platform, but now to get the same catalog, you need 25 different subscriptions. Like, people are not doing. People just started to stream.
Max and Disney.
No, people start to pirate. I mean.
Plus, Paramount Plus, Apple TV, and finally Peacock. We're already looking at over $100 a month, or $1,236 a year, and this is all for no improvement in service. All that gets you is the same level of ad-free access you would have had for $8 just a decade ago. Sure, you'd probably get more content paying $100 a month today than you would have gotten 10 years ago, but you just can't deny how insanely expensive it's getting for normal people. As we all thought we were escaping cable prices, but now we're paying even more. But we're hardly done here. If you're into documentaries, you might want Curiosity Stream, which is another $5 a month. If you like anime, then Crunchyroll is another $8 a month minimum. And oftentimes, this is still with the ad-supported subscription tier. Often it's not even cheaper, it's just the old price they used to charge before they hiked it up. Some platforms like Amazon just force the adverts into their existing service, or charging their customers $3 extra a month to remove them. Yet the entire reason to often have these services is to not deal with constant ads anymore, and going back is seemingly a non-negotiable. It's why an estimated 25% of Prime Video's young adult users cancelled their subscription entirely when it was introduced. Plus, if you have any other subscriptions, like a Spotify subscription, ChatGPT subscription, even a subscription for your car, you'll end up just forking out hundreds of dollars a month very easily. And so when the obvious alternative to much of this stuff is always going to be free, you can see why so many people have been willing just to say no to the nonsense, as millions of people have now been recently cancelling their subscriptions, and if things continue to get worse, this process will only accelerate. But before we get into the pirate ships threatening to sink the entire industry, we need to understand how we even got here in the first place. You see, the Hollywood of today is completely different to what it used to be. You have this image of a small set of studio executives and CEOs controlling the whole industry and taking the profits. While most of that's still true, they aren't working for themselves anymore. The past 2 decades have seen a process called financialization decimate Hollywood, as described in the book Derivative Media: How Wall Street Devours Culture. You see, the studios don't even own themselves anymore. They've often sold out to private equity, and here's how it works. Say you've got a struggling movie studio like MGM in 2004. They had been one of the biggest studios in Hollywood, but despite their rich catalogue of IPs and characters like James Bond and Spider-Man, the 90s and 2000s had not been kind to them. Now, saddled with debt from trying to stay relevant, the studio was looking for a way out, and this is where private equity comes along. They see what's called a distressed asset, and they have just the right tool to make profit from it: a leveraged buyout. Using borrowed money, billions of it in this case, a few equity firms could take over a company like MGM and pay off the previous debts with even more borrowed cash. Often a larger competitor will then join the buyout so that the private equity firms can use them as a platform to extract even more profit. In MGM's case, the equity firms were joined by some of the other studios like Sony, eager to get their hands on MGM's licenses. MGM meanwhile took on a further $3.7 billion in debt to try and make this deal, nearly twice as much as the equity firms paid off when they bought it. Now, the standard play is often to strip the assets and just move on. This is how private equity makes money from distressed assets. In MGM's case, Sony took the valuable characters, the catalogue of movies, and any other content which was potentially profitable, and all the other parts of MGM, like all the staff, were dead weights. As costs go down, profits remain the same for a little while the stock price goes up and the equity firm can make their money back. By the time the damage from the layoffs and the liquidation becomes clear, the firms that bought it will have probably sold it already, or they'll have made enough of stock dividends that they just don't care anymore. While the MGM buyout marked the beginning of a gold rush for private equity, it really didn't go that well on paper. A few years later, MGM was still heavily in debt with barely anything left to sell to pay it off. Sony hadn't made as much on Spider-Man and James Bond as they thought, but the end result of all of this was that Hollywood became even more concentrated. MGM ceased to exist as it got traded from one equity firm to another, each one trying to extract the last bit of value from its corpse. Their characters and IP got swallowed up into Sony, backed by private equity. Hollywood then constricted even more and sold out to private equity once again. And we've seen how this process eventually unfolded with MGM, as the entire company got stripped and thrown away like a total car. The next 2 decades saw the same song and dance play out over and over again. In the same year, JP Morgan and some other firms bought out AMC. Cinemark was sold out to Madison Dearborn Partners. And in 2006, a group of investors led by the world's largest asset manager Blackstone bought out the Nielsen Company, which is a massive Hollywood audience data firm. Hulu then went a year later, as well as Univision not long afterwards. DreamWorks was then bought up in 2008 by private equity, Miramax in 2010, and in 2012, one of Hollywood's largest talent agencies.
Wait, DreamWorks, they were the ones that made Shrek, right? They made like good movies when I was a kid.
Equity, Miramax in 2010, and in 2012, one of Hollywood's largest talent agencies, WME, was brought out by the private equity firm Silver Lake. A year later, they then struck again, buying out another agency called IMG, and they were 2 of the 4 big ones. Some of IMG's clients included Taylor Swift and Justin Timberlake. And so in the space of 1 year, one private equity firm took control of a huge part of the industry. So why has no one ever heard about any of this? You think people would be interested in learning how just a few firms bought one of the biggest industries in the world. The whole of Hollywood has been bought out, and yet this was buried in the press, especially in the press that covers Hollywood. The Hollywood Reporter, Variety, Rolling Stone, IndieWire, and most other major entertainment news companies are owned by Penske Media Group. This is a
kind of crazy how everything got bought up and then boom, everything became liberal and garbage, and you know what I mean. You know exactly what I mean when you look at the stuff produced now and the stuff produced back in the day. It had more soul, more flair, it was more human. Oh no, everything is so goddamn soulless everywhere.
Conglomerate that was made to hoover up Hollywood Reporter, Variety, Rolling Stone, IndieWire, and most other major entertainment news companies are owned by Penske Media Group. This is a conglomerate that was made to hoover up all the news companies and put them under one roof. And you can guess who's been bankrolling the operation. Private equity firms have put hundreds of millions into it. Each time these companies change hands, the firm that ends up owning them tries to extract as much profit as possible. So they cut costs, which means laying off the staff. While the stock price might go up for a time and the firm might end up getting richer, the actual company they're buying ceases to function properly. And it's really hard to overstate the effect this has had on TV shows and movies as a whole. It explains why every movie just seems to flop nowadays. This is exactly why it's so hard to trust the media anymore, because our news and media is almost entirely owned by the same handful of private equity groups, which is why you should check out ground.news/moon, as Ground News gathers stories from over 50,000 sources around the content at the same speed or quality. It's why we don't see things like Breaking Bad anymore. Breaking Bad, a 5-season masterpiece, came out across 2008 to 2013. This was just before the buyouts really took their effect, as pretty much every year like clockwork they made a new series of one of the best shows of all time, which is something that's completely unheard of for a show of its size today. In fact, we today just see flop after flop in movies and TV. Nowadays, you'd be lucky if your favorite show was half as good and had a new series come out every 2 years. Meanwhile, the studios and their private equity puppet masters have done everything they could.
Nothing now is memorable. Nothing kind of next. Nothing tells a good story anymore. There is no masculine man does some cool shit and everybody's, there is no Terminator. There's none of that anymore. Now it's just, dudes in fucking dresses being all feminine and shit. Of course, people don't find movies like this memorable. I've gone to, what's it called? The cinema, right? Go watch like a premiere. I like scary movies. I go and watch with people, friends, family, and every scary movie is just garbage, and like everything is, I don't know, bro. I at this point, all I do is, if I'm gonna watch something that is entertainment, then I have to watch something older or something very niche. I recently, or not too long ago, I watched a movie called it was a Tom Cruise movie. It was called it was called Eyes Wide Shut. That's what that was what it was called. And it was a good movie. It was like the dude who created it, it looks like something weird happened to him. And maybe like I don't know, like search it up. Something weird happened to the dude who created that movie. And in that movie it was like basically a cult that was doing some weird shit in New York. Very interesting. I would recommend it. Eyes Wide Shut with Tom Cruise.
Could every 2 years. Meanwhile, the studios and their private equity puppet masters have done everything they could to reduce costs in other ways by bypassing the writers and actors entirely. One way you might have noticed is their obsession with cranking out more reality TV. It fills out a streaming services library while costing far less to make. Private equity firms have coordinated on this because each one has exactly the same goal: reduce costs, increase shareholder profits. They operate on a short-term basis so that they can sell the stock, or just sell it to the next private equity firm in a couple of years if they overstretch what they already.
Damn, that makes sense with the especially the Marvel stuff. I used to watch the Marvel movies when I was younger. Iron Man and all that, Hulk was cool. But then something happened around like 2018, 19, 20. Like 2020, like something happened after Endgame, which was they stopped making good quality movies in the MCU, and they just produced like garbage TV shows. They just kept pumping them out, and in how he frames it, it makes very good sense. It makes perfect sense, and like it's insane. Like, yeah, I mean, I don't even watch. I don't care anymore about anything. In like Marvel, MCU, all that. I don't care anymore. After Endgame, everything went to shit. That was the true ending.
already bought. This just sell it to the next private equity firm in a couple of years if they overstretch what they already bought. This way there's never actually any long-term thinking or passion behind any project today, not even in the media reporting on any of these films. The entire industry has been sold out completely. However, the most important thing here is that the only way they compete with each other now is through the hoarding and use of intellectual property, those IPs and content sources that keep people on your streaming platform rather than the competitors. And this is where the industry is today, solely focused on the IP wars rather than anything else. And unfortunately that seems to be the future of the entire industry. Here's why. Today, studio executives all generally agree that you need around 200 million subscribers to keep a major streaming platform alive and well. This takes an insane amount of money to get enough content and keep people subscribed. Netflix spent around $17 billion on content in 2024 alone. They can afford it as by far the largest and most profitable streaming platform around. In fact, only 3 studios have this many subscribers: Amazon, Netflix, and Disney when you combine their 2 platforms. For the others, it's just a completely different story. There just isn't enough to go around, with every studio trying to take their own slice of the pie, and the smaller ones are taking a heavy financial beating. According to the New York Times, in 2023, Paramount lost $1.6 billion in streaming, Comcast lost $2.7 billion, and even Disney lost $2.6 billion despite their massive size. And so how are they dealing with these catastrophic losses, and all the losses happening in the box offices right now for these companies? Well, private equity has dealt with this in their usual short-sighted way by squeezing every last drop out of their subscriber base. Not thinking long-term, not thinking about customer satisfaction, and not thinking about future great movie making. Just short-term decisions to sell the stock. To do this, they've raised prices as high as they dare, and they've added adverts with extra charges to remove them. The end result is similar to shrinkflation. You get less than before for even higher prices, completely ruining all customer satisfaction. One of the worst things you can do in business, but this can't go on forever. As we zoom out, we'll see that for once, this greed could actually be punished, and finally the consequences of these short-term actions.
How many people are gonna go pirate and never go back? This is just what happens. You get that little taste and then boom, you're gonna find out that you can do things which you hadn't even thought of, which helps you out, save money, save time. You'll find things if you start going down that hole. And yeah, I mean, people, it's gotten too bad. Like, the service is garbage now. And I really liked what the Gabe Newell from the dude who created Valve. He was the one who created Valve. I like what he said. He said that piracy is a service problem, service issue. Fix the service, people don't pirate. They're just whatever is easier to do. But you know, I'm not advertising anything. But from what I've heard, piracy is not that difficult. And the what is more difficult to get something for free, and you have to do press a little buttons, boom boom bang, check if everything looks legit, or pay what was it, $100 a month for shit trash movies and TV shows. No, thank you.
Will hit these companies actually be punished, and finally the consequences of these short-term actions will hit these companies even harder. The shrinkflation comparison reveals why. The classic example for this is a chocolate bar. The big candy companies like Cadbury have steadily shrunk the product while keeping the price the same or even increasing the price. Most people don't really have a choice when it comes to things.
Wait, they made the chocolate
even harder. The shrinkflation comparison reveals why. The classic example for this is a chocolate bar. The big candy companies like Cadbury have steadily shrunk the product while keeping the price the same or even increasing the price. Most people don't really have a choice.
Wait, so they made the chocolate smaller? Damn.
When it comes to things like cheap chocolates, so they can get away with it as long as their competitors do the same. But unfortunately for movie studios and their private equity overlords, people actually do have a real choice when it comes to streaming platforms. Through all this cost cutting, penny pinching, and terrible business practices.
Yeah, stop eating sugar. Just stop it. It is wonderful. You were never meant as a human. This is a massive just tangent, but stop eating sugar. It is kind of unnatural. I do believe if you're gonna have sugar, it had better come from fruits. Do not eat any of this like processed garbage. Screw all of that. Drink water. Drink coconut milk. Coconut. Yeah. No, I mean not milk. I mean coconut water. It's wonderful. And yeah, eat like proper food, please, if you can. You know, you can blame it on, oh, the prices are high. Like proper food is like, yeah, rice. Okay, don't eat Big Macs every day. Cook rice, make some cheap meat. It's good, and you'll feel much better. Just stop consuming the sugar garbage, and you know they'll lose money, and stop throwing your money away with these garbage services. You don't need them. They need you far more than you need them. Remember that.
Streaming platforms. Through all this cost-cutting, penny-pinching, and terrible business practices, private equity forgets that people have an entirely free option if they ever get sick of the major streaming platforms. And of course, we're in no way endorsing piracy here, but this is just an inevitable economic consequence of offering a bad service. As we zoom
Yes, I am not endorsing piracy.
out to the wider industry surrounding economic consequence of offering a bad service. As we zoom out to the wider industry surrounding digital content, we'll see this in full effect. Valve are the kings of digital content distribution thanks to the long-lasting dominance of Steam. Games are an industry that encourages piracy like no other, especially now that you're probably going to be downloading them whether you follow the law or not. Meanwhile, Steam has remained on top for years now, despite other companies like Tencent through Epic Games throwing billions and billions at trying to unseat them. Despite how many new games they give away, despite how easy pirating is, people just prefer to use Steam. Gabe Newell, the CEO of Valve, is often quoted when it comes to piracy.
What's Valve's take on piracy?
Piracy to us, so we don't really worry about piracy. You know, when we think, when you look at the top 10 issues on our list at any given point in time, piracy is almost never something that's on that list. And the reason that we think that we don't have issues with piracy is that there's misconceptions in the industry about what piracy is, right?
He must understand it after all, having beaten it so thoroughly. Valve didn't need to worry about privacy like Gabe said because they know how it works. Some people will just always pirate everything and you can't reach those consumers and there's just no point trying. But most people often want to buy games. They don't want the viruses that come with piracy, they don't want all the issues, and they might just want to support game companies. Oftentimes they just don't want to even break the law. There's obviously a lot of reasons not to pirate generally. People often only pirate when there's just no other choice.
Yeah, it's just, how do I explain it? It's just more legit. But even with Steam and stuff, what's scary is I think Steam is good. I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure. I mean, write in the comments if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure Steam is not one of these like cooked corporation companies, whatever. And companies like Ubisoft, they are fucked. They openly, didn't they say that even if you bought a game, let's say you bought it, you owned it, they could take it away whenever they wanted. And it's kind of scary how you don't own things physically anymore. Like back in the day, at least you had the disc, right? And they couldn't take the disc away, then they had to physically rob your house. But now everything is so digital, and people like these companies, they just like they can take it away. And that's why Ubisoft, whatever launcher they had, that shit failed. And I think Steam will continue to be on top because they're not idiots. They're run by smart people that I think know what they're doing. But
choice or when they lots of reasons not to pirate generally. People often only pirate when there's just no other choice or when they feel like there's no other choice. They simply take the path of least resistance. If everything you want to watch is on Netflix and the costs are reasonable, lots of people will just buy a Netflix subscription. But when the service is poor and expensive like it is today, a much larger proportion of people will just pirate instead. So game companies like Steam can get around this because they offer a really good service. You actually buy a game on Steam and you can download it anywhere. You're not just limited to a few designated devices and you aren't region locked. It won't rotate out of Steam's library in a month or two, making it inaccessible. They offer something much closer to actual ownership. Meanwhile, other game companies offer such a bad service that people had to make a petition just to try and force them to do the bare minimum and actually keep a game functional that people have already paid for. It's called Stop Killing Games, and really it's just asking for the—
Yeah, I know about this. It was it's so bad. It's like you sell a cake and it looks beautiful. It has, you know, strawberries. It's a beautiful cake, and you buy it, i.e. you buy the game, you buy the service or whatever. You know, you cut it and then boom, it's just garbage, and it's so much garbage inside the cake, and you were tricked. And this is what these companies do, man. They sell you a game that is unplayable. It is such dog shit.
bare minimum service already paid for. It's called Stop Killing Games, and really it's just asking for the bare minimum service. Ubisoft's game The Crew is the example that the petition uses. When it was released, it was always online and you needed to log into Ubisoft's dedicated servers to play it. Now it's old and Ubisoft wants to take the servers offline, but this will then mean a game that people paid for will just cease to function. The petition doesn't even force them to keep the servers running. Instead, all it asks for is that these companies must let players run their own private server. It's a tiny cost in the long run for these massive conglomerates, but these companies have all lobbied together to fight this. And the ironic thing here is that the pirates have actually gotten the best service by far in the case of The Crew. A cracked version of a private server has been floating around for ages now. A common consequence of the medieval attitude most companies take towards piracy is that the paying, law-abiding customers always just get punished in the end anyway. It's all typical of short-sighted decisions made because the private equity companies at the top are the ones who are really pulling the strings. And we might have praised Valve, but they aren't doing anything that amazing. They're just not buying into the same business model that everyone else seems to be following right now. But maybe that is amazing though, just considering how every other company seems to shoot itself in the foot. It's all the result of a classic expand and squeeze model that startups have been using for years. Uber's a great example. First, they took in as much investor capital as they could, expanding their service to the world while losing billions just to grow larger. Then when they had a large enough market share, they switched to squeeze model. That's when the higher surge pricing came in. The lower pay for drivers, simply just a poorer service for more money. And people—
And there's many that did this. Tinder is a great example. Everybody started using Tinder because it worked, and then they turn off the spigot, and then you have to pay subscriptions, and then you have to, oh man, send what is it, like roses or something? No, super likes. That's what it was. Yeah, it's garbage. Same with Uber. What's it called? The enshittification of the.
Couldn't go back to what they used to have as it was already too late and they'd gotten too used to the service. Spotify actually did the same thing. They even used piracy to their advantage. At first, lots of their catalog was downloaded off of sites like Napster. They skirted the law and took control of the market before the big labels could organize themselves, offering a better service that beats the pirates. Later, to keep their position, they made a deal with the big labels. They sold out the artists in favor of hedge funds and private equity, and it would end up making both of them far richer at the expense of the people actually making most of the music. Now Spotify—
Yeah, music is worthless. Like back in the day, it was worth more, but because of how accessible it is, like music is so cheap, if that makes sense.
is just another arm of private expense of the people actually making most of the music. Now Spotify is just another arm of private equity interests that already own the music industry. It was only their absolute dominance over the market that forced the labels to actually work together and accept their place. Otherwise, every major music label would have its own version of Spotify, just like we have with movie and TV streaming platforms. And you can actually tell they're all owned by private equity now just based on their decisions. You might be tired of hearing them by now because they fit the exact same pattern we've seen over and over again. Spotify even recently moved to squeeze costs by reducing royalties even more for small artists. Now, because of their arbitrary decision, each track now needs at least 1,000 streams a year to make any money at all. It runs alongside their constant pressure on free users. Now you can't even choose which specific songs to listen to if you don't have a premium account, and there's even more adverts constantly interrupting the music. Meanwhile, Daniel Ek, the CEO, has invested $700 million of these profits into AI military companies. And you can bet if Netflix had taken more of the market, the big movie studios might have struck a similar deal, but instead we got the splintered, unstable ecosystem we have today. Which brings us to the final chapter of our journey down the corporate rabbit hole, and as we zoom out to the wider internet, it's all been decimated by these same corporate tactics. Social media companies pushed forward by their investors have done everything they can to sanitize online discussion and make it suitable for advertisers. Meanwhile, the actual content has been degraded by corporate shit-sighted thinking and is now far worse. Want to know the release date of the
Yeah, the internet has just gotten worse and worse, and I don't know when it kind of died. I don't know, 2011, 2012, 13, 14, 2008. I don't know.
next season of The Boys? This hypothetical article might tell you, but first you'll get the legally mandated cookie message. This is here because of efforts to regulate corporate data theft, and good luck finding the reject all button if there even is one. Now they're trying to hide it as much as they legally can. Then there's the anti-ad blocker message next, either you comply or you try to bypass it some other way. Yet again, the people following the rules get invasive adverts. The people who find a way to get around them to read in peace. Then you finally get the actual article. But because the massive private equity conglomerate fired most of the writers, it would mostly be rushed out insane drivel about a show, rather than the actual question.
Yeah, I was thinking about like safety and privacy. It looks like Linux is a good option, but I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence. Then I have to learn a bunch of shit. I'm willing to, but I guess there's some things that kind of just don't work. That is kind of nice to have. But, I don't know. Maybe in a few years I'm gonna go to Linux when it's better. I'm just waiting a little. But from what I know, it has gotten better in recent years, far better than what it used to be. But yeah, I'm thinking more on privacy and security and all that. I'm definitely, if I'm gonna have in the future like family, kids, and I need to like kind of be on a safe side, I'm definitely going like I'm gonna go deeper into what's it called, cyber security, whatever. I'm gonna learn about that. Probably gonna do some Linux stuff. Have some kind of like home, what's it called, server or some shit. That'd be cool. I'm sure there's like a billion tutorials on it on YouTube, so probably figure it out. You can learn a lot from using the internet properly and not just consuming it like endless donuts, scrolling, doom scrolling. You use the internet as a tool instead of, a cope.
The headline asks, it would mostly be rushed out insane drivel about a show, rather than the actual question the headline asks, and will either pander to the film or diss the film based on its narrative and the investors' preferences running the entire industry, which just makes the dead internet theory true in an entirely different way. As bots get more common and start writing all of these articles for these private equity firms, there won't even be any real human opinion here, and the more bots there are commenting and posting on all of the slop, the worse it will get and the harder it will become to find real information, made by actual humans, making the internet even creepier and more controlled than we see today. Each inconvenience for the consumer is because of a greedy decision solely to get short-term profits and sell a company. And these short-sighted policies are really infecting everything. But because of this, it might actually help the streaming situation, as this might actually be the one sector where there will always be an alternative to the corporate route. If it gets worse and worse, there will always be a pressure release valve as we see today. And yet these companies still wonder why piracy is massively increasing today. And if they make it even worse for the consumer, more and more people will just leave and this whole corporate ecosystem could collapse under its own weight, as too many short-term—
Yeah, more and more people are abandoning Windows as well. Everything that is like offered by like giant corporations, like people are they're just getting more and more sick of this shit.
decisions end up being catastrophic. But unfortunately, this just isn't the same for other industries. We already talked about shrinkflation and chocolate bars, but other products and services have similar problems. Take cars for example, private equity is all over the manufacturers. They're the ones pushing for things like a subscription cost for heated seats. And we're not actually joking, this was a real idea pushed by BMW. Just £10 a month in the UK would unlock this feature, which they'd already added to the car. It's simply a completely transparent attempt to squeeze even more money from the customers in whatever way they can. And really it just makes it even sadder that the old anti-piracy ads still isn't true. If you could actually download a car, maybe things would be a little bit different.
You wouldn't download a car. Paying for a service and then getting flooded with ads is insulting. If buying isn't owning, then piracy isn't stealing. It's crazy to me that paid for services such as Netflix, Disney Plus, and Amazon Prime have more ads than your average sketchy website. Piracy doesn't rob media creators, it robs the copyright barons who are destroying creativity. Copyright law was introduced to protect the original artist, but it doesn't do that anymore. Piracy never left in my life. You'll own nothing and be happy doesn't work for me. Death to the subscription model. If you don't own it with a one-off payment, then I'll be owning it without paying a cent. Piracy is a symptom, not the problem. Suddenly a DVD player is the next gen. Yeah. I don't have like an optical what's it called drive in my computer, but I'm probably like you can't buy that, right? Or probably connects with like the USB or something. USB. Yeah, anyway boys, I hope you guys enjoyed this one. This one was really interesting. I really like this one. Anyway boys, I hope you guys enjoyed this one. I catch you boys on the next one. Take care of yourself.